Hey there, dreamers. Welcome back to our channel. Before we drift into the classic journey of Candace Flynn from Phineas and Ferb, I would love to know, where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see how far and wide our sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. The sun rises gently over the familiar rooftops of Danville, casting a soft golden hue over the sleepy neighborhood. Trees sway lazily in the morning breeze, and the streets are still quiet, still dreaming. Somewhere a lawn sprinkler ticks into motion. Birds chirp their warm-up melodies, and the world takes its first breath of the day. And inside one particular house, a soft alarm clock begins to chirp. It doesn't buzz, it doesn't ring. It chirps like a digital bird with no real urgency, just a light reminder that morning has arrived. Underneath a tangled mess of pillows and half-kicked blankets, a tired hand emerges. It fumbles a moment before landing directly on the snooze button. Candace Flynn lets out a long sigh. She's awake, sort of. There's something special about mornings in Candace's world. They don't start with grand inventions or evil schemes, not for her. They begin with slow stretches, grumbly yawns, and that moment of semi-awareness where she debates whether today, finally, will be the day she busts her brothers. Every day starts with that tiny spark of hope. Her room is a quiet blend of teenage comfort band posters she's grown slightly out of, a vanity with a clutter of makeup she never quite finishes organizing, and a few stuffed animals that she still hasn't brought herself to pack away. The sun filters through her blind and striping her pink walls with golden light. "Okay, Candace," she mutters to herself, still wrapped in her sheets. Today's the day. I can feel it. Totally gonna bust them. It's going down." It's a ritual, almost meditative. She says it every morning sometimes, with conviction, other times with sleepy sarcasm. But deep down, she always hopes it's true. That maybe this is the day her mom finally sees what Phineas and Ferb are doing. That maybe, just once, reality will match her wild, breathless retellings. As she pulls herself out of bed and shuffles toward the bathroom, we get a glimpse of who Candace is behind the frantic shouting and exaggerated gestures. She's not just the sister trying to keep order. She's a teenager trying to find her place not just in her family, but in the strange little world she calls home. Downstairs, the clink of cereal bowls and the faint hum of an already moving day reach her ears. She knows exactly what that means. They're up. Phineas and Ferb are probably already planning something. Something big, something weird, something 100% not allowed. Candace brushes her teeth while staring into the mirror, practicing her expressions. "Mom, they built a roller coaster, a full roller coaster in the backyard. Seriously, you have to believe me this time." She frowns. Too dramatic. Then again, maybe not dramatic enough. There's a pressure behind her eyes, not sadness exactly, but tension. The tension of someone always trying to prove themselves, always trying to get ahead of something just out of reach. It sits behind her smile, behind her wide-eyed excitement. It hums beneath every attempt to tattle, every breathless sprint to find her mom. She doesn't really want to ruin their fun, not really. She wants someone to say, "Candace, you were right." She wants to feel seen. In a house full of chaos, inventions, and talking platypuses, Candace just wants to matter. And so the day begins. A yawn, a hairbrush through strawberry blonde tangles, and a stomp down the stairs in her slippers. The familiar rhythm of her daily battle quietly sets in. From the kitchen, she hears her mom, Linda, humming some tune from her old rock star days while flipping pancakes. The smell of syrup and butter fills the house, warm, sweet, grounding. Candace pauses in the hallway for a moment, just listening. Her mom's humming is so soft, so content. Then, as if on cue, a noise, a loud clang, followed by what sounds suspiciously like a rocket engine coming to life. Candace's eyes widen. Her heart starts to race. "They're already at it?" she gasps. "It's not even 8 a.m. She rushes to the window, pulling the curtains aside. And there it is. A sprawling contraption in the backyard, gleaming with polished metal, whirring gears and blinking lights. Phineas is holding a blueprint. Ferb is tightening bolts. A bird lands on the structure and immediately gets catapulted skyward. Candace groans. "You have got to be kidding me." Candace whirls away from the window, panic already rising like a familiar friend in her chest. She grabs her phone with lightning speed and dials the only number she believes can save the world from her brother's madness. "Mom, Mom!" she cries into the phone, before Linda can even say hello. "You need to come home, right now. Phineas and Ferb just built... Well, I'm not entirely sure what it is yet, but it has wings, and it's smoking, and one of the neighborhood squirrels is wearing goggles." A pause. Her mom says something calming, probably reassuring. Candace doesn't really hear it. "No, I am not exaggerating. This time it's real. I swear, if you just looked outside for once." But Linda is already saying she's on her way to the grocery store. She'll be back later. "Try to relax, sweetie," she says, cheerful as ever. "And maybe don't start your morning so stressed out." Click. The call ends. Candace stares at her phone for a second, her mouth open in disbelief. "Try to relax," she repeats mockingly. "Sure, Mom. I'll just ignore the homemade particle accelerator in the backyard." She drops her phone onto the couch with an exasperated flop and slumps beside it. Outside, something explodes in a burst of glitter and steam. A loud cheer from her brothers follows. They're clearly having the time of their lives. For a moment, Candace just sits there, letting the chaos swirl around her without moving. She leans her head back and sighs again, deeper this time. There's a weariness in her voice that doesn't come from being tired. It comes from trying again and again and getting nowhere. And yet even now, she knows she'll try again. It's not just the inventions. It's the principle of it all. The audacity of two kids turning their backyard into a science fair on steroids every single day, and no one else noticing. Not the neighbors, not her mom, not even Jeremy, her sweet, oblivious, perfect crush. Everyone acts like everything's normal, while she's the only one sounding the alarm. And in that, there's a strange kind of loneliness. She picks up a cushion and hugs it to her chest. The morning light has shifted now, streaming a little more directly into the living room, painting warm gold patterns on the carpet. In the distance, she hears Phineas shout something like, "We just need more helium," followed by Ferb giving an enthusiastic thumbs up. Another soft boom. Candace groans again, but this time it's more dramatic than frustrated. She rolls off the couch, letting herself thud to the floor in a heap of limbs and sighs. "Why do I even bother?" she mutters to the ceiling. "Seriously, is this like some big universe joke? Did I accidentally sign up to be the only sane person in a cartoon?" From behind the couch, a small meep answers. Perry the platypus, or as Candace still calls him, Mom's weird pet that smells like damp socks, waddles casually across the floor, completely unbothered. He stops, glances at her, blinks, and keeps waddling. Candace props herself up on her elbows. "And don't think I don't know you're weird, too. I've seen the way you disappear all the time, just sneaking off to do whatever it is platypuses do." She watches him vanish behind the kitchen door. There's no reply. There never is. And maybe that's the strangest thing of all. Every day brings new absurdity, and every day she's the only one who seems to care. But it's not hopeless, at least not completely. Her phone buzzes. It's a text from Stacy. "Hey, you still alive, or did the boys build a volcano again?" Candace smiles genuinely, and just that tiny connection. That reminder that someone does believe her, or at least listens, brings a bit of warmth back to her morning. "They built a rocket hat. I think they're trying to launch squirrels into space. Classic. Want to come hang later?" Candace stares at the message for a moment. Her fingers hover over the screen. She glances at the window again. Ferb is adjusting a dial, while Phineas waves his arms at the sky. She sighs, this time with a smirk. "Let's see if I survive the next 15 minutes first." Her fingers tap back a reply. "Sure. After I bust them." The front door creaks open with a dramatic flair only Candace can muster, and she marches outside in her slippers and a mismatched pair of socks. Her hair is still slightly tangled from sleep, and she's wearing her favorite oversized t-shirt that reads, "Totally Busted," a shirt she had custom-made during a particularly confident afternoon last summer. It's her chosen armor for mornings like this. Across the yard, Phineas notices her immediately. He waves enthusiastically. "Hey, Candace, you're just in time for the test flight." Candace stops on the edge of the lawn, hands on her hips. She doesn't return the wave. "You guys are so busted. You hear me? This time you've really crossed the line. There's actual fire coming out of that thing." Phineas looks at the flames as if noticing them for the first time. "Oh yeah, Ferb? Maybe we tone that down to medium flame?" Ferb, holding a wrench in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other, gives a nonchalant thumbs up. The invention, a gleaming, oversized hat fitted with rockets and squirrel-sized harnesses, hums gently, giving off low bursts of steam. Nearby, a trio of squirrels in tiny jumpsuits waits patiently in a launch crate. Candace opens her mouth to shout again, but something stalls her. Maybe it's the sight of Ferb gently strapping a squirrel into the launch chair with the care of a professional. Maybe it's the fact that none of this makes any sense, and yet, here it is. Again. The absurdity of it all makes her blink twice. I don't even have words for this," she mutters. She glances up and down the street. Not a single neighbor is reacting. Mrs. Garcia across the road is watering her tulips, like there isn't a full-on backyard rocket launch in progress. Mr. Johnson jogs past with headphones in, nodding politely as he passes Candace, completely unfazed. It's like the entire world has agreed to ignore everything but her. Her fists clench. This isn't just about chaos anymore. It's about the unfairness of it. Why does no one else see it? Why is she always the only one standing on this weird little battlefield? "Okay, fine," she growls, storming back into the house. "If no one else will do anything, I will." She stomps to the kitchen and throws open a drawer, rifling through it with purpose. Paper, markers, scissors, tape. If her mom won't believe her with words, maybe she'll believe a well-crafted visual aid, a timeline, a diagram, evidence. Linda, after all, is out getting groceries. That gives Candace exactly 45 minutes to build a case airtight enough that no judge or mom could deny it. As she spreads her materials across the kitchen table, a breeze wafts in through the open window. It smells like grass, syrup, and rocket fuel, a bizarre combination that now somehow smells like summer. Candace pauses for a second, inhaling. There's something oddly comforting about it now. Not the rocket fuel part, of course, but the sense that all of it is just another strange, looping part of her life. She shakes her head quickly, snapping herself back into focus. No, not today. No distractions. This is my moment. She starts sketching a detailed diagram, a timeline of backyard events from the past week, complete with dates, timestamps, and color-coded footnotes. She even adds a section labeled Suspicious Platypus Sightings, just in case Perry's sneaky little behavior turns out to be part of this. As she works, her expression softens just a little. Her eyes narrow in concentration, tongue poking out the corner of her mouth like it always does when she's really focused. Her breathing slows. The paper rustles gently beneath her fingers. There's something peaceful in this focus, something meditative. Her entire world narrows to felt-tip pens and sticky notes. In this moment, she doesn't feel like the wild, shouting Candace everyone brushes off. She feels smart, capable, determined. And for a few minutes, the silence is kind. That is, until a shadow passes over the table. She looks up and sees a massive squirrel floating past the kitchen window in a jet-powered helmet, squeaking happily as it spins in a lazy arc over the neighborhood. Candace drops her pen. I really hope Mom gets back before that thing lands on the car. Candace bolts out the front door, half-finished chart in hand, scanning the sky for the rogue squirrel astronaut. I swear, if that thing scratches the windshield, I'm taking away their tools myself. From somewhere behind the trees, there's a gentle thud, followed by a delighted squeak. Okay, the squirrel's fine. That's something. But her car anxiety is quickly replaced by a surge of purpose. She clutches her diagram and notebook against her chest like a mission file and rushes back inside. It's almost time. Her mom should be back any minute. If she's lucky, there might still be glitter smoke or acorns stuck to the fence when Linda pulls into the driveway. She scrambles to the window to check. Nothing. In the span of what couldn't have been more than a minute, the entire backyard is transformed. The rocket contraption is gone. The launch pad? Gone. The squirrels? Casually munching on nuts under the tree like none of them were ever briefly cosmonauts. Even the burn marks on the lawn seem to have mysteriously vanished. Candace blinks. She spins in place and bolts toward the backyard door. Nothing, just clean, ordinary grass. Ferb is calmly watering the plants. Phineas is reading a comic book like nothing at all happened. What? No, she stammers. Where did it all go? It was right here. I saw it with my own eyes. There were goggles, tiny goggles. Phineas looks up at her with a calm smile. Hey, Candace. You seem a little stressed. Want some lemonade? She gapes at him. Lemonade? I don't need a refreshment. I need you to stop reality warping everything the second I try to get proof. He shrugs in that irritatingly casual way only someone completely at peace can. Suit yourself. Linda's car pulls into the driveway just as Candace's breath catches in her throat. This is it. She runs to the front yard, almost tripping on the curb. Mom! They did it again! I promise you, rocket squirrels this time! Linda, ever patient, steps out of the car with a reusable shopping bag in each hand and a polite smile. Rocket squirrels? That's a new one. Candace gestures wildly toward the backyard. Just come look, please. There has to be something left. Linda follows slowly, calmly, while Candace bounds ahead, her heart pounding in her ears. She leads her mom through the yard, eyes scanning every inch for some proof, any evidence. But it's perfect. Mowed, clean, green. Even the suspicious scorch marks on the tree are gone. Linda glances around, unconvinced but kind. Looks pretty normal to me, sweetie. No, it's not. It's never normal. It's only ever normal when you're here. Candace waves her diagram in the air, slightly crumpled from the chaos. I made a whole chart and everything. Look, this is yesterday's zipline fiasco, Tuesday's trampoline fusion cannon, and, it's all just gone again. Her voice cracks on the last word. It's a small thing, a little wobble in her tone, but it's enough to make her stop. Linda walks over, places a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Candace, maybe it's okay to let your brothers have a little fun now and then. You don't always have to worry so much. Just enjoy the day, all right? And just like that, her chance vanishes. Again. Linda turns and walks inside, humming a tune softly, leaving Candace standing there in the sun-drenched quiet of her own defeat. She lets her hands drop to her sides, the diagram falling to the grass without resistance. A breeze picks up. The paper flutters, then rests beside her foot. For a moment, Candace doesn't move. She watches her brothers out of the corner of her eye. They're sitting on lawn chairs now, sipping lemonade like they're on vacation in their own backyard. Perry waddles by with his usual blank stare, slipping behind the shed without a sound. 1,000 thoughts bubble inside her: frustration, disbelief, and the faint ache of being the only one who notices, but none of them rise to the surface. Instead, she sits down on the grass, tucking her knees to her chest, and she sighs. Not the dramatic, over-the-top sigh she started her day with. Not even the groaning, desperate sigh from mid-chaos. This one is different. It's quieter, a little tired, a little sad, but also accepting. Because deep down, she knows this is her life. The chaos, the roller coaster, the impossible inventions and quiet endings, and even if no one else ever believes her, she still sees it. She knows it. And somehow that counts for something. She leans back into the grass and closes her eyes for a moment. The sun is warm, the breeze is gentle. Somewhere nearby, a squirrel chirps softly. Candace lets herself breathe. Just for now. She doesn't have to chase anything, not for the next few minutes. There's a strange kind of silence that follows a failed mission. Candace lies on her bed, staring at the ceiling as the late morning sun glows faintly through her curtains. The ceiling fan hums in slow, lazy circles above her, its rhythm almost hypnotic. The distant sound of a lawnmower buzzes from somewhere down the street, and outside her window, a dragonfly zips lazily past. Another day. Another missed opportunity. Another moment where the universe folded itself neatly away just in time to make her look ridiculous. Candace presses a pillow against her face and lets out a muffled groan. It's always the same. Every time she gets close, so close, something happens. The machine vanishes. The debris disappears. Her mom turns her head a second too late, and poof, the invention might as well have never existed. And somehow, every single time, it leaves Candace feeling just a little more invisible. She rolls over and reaches for her journal, the cover soft and worn from years of scribbles. Most people wouldn't guess that someone as loud, reactive, and overly expressive as Candace kept a private journal, but that's where all the feelings go. The ones that don't fit in, shouting matches or sarcastic retorts. She flips through pages of neatly written chaos. Some are lists. Top 5 times I almost busted them. Weirdest invention so far, and things no one else ever notices but me. Others are full of doodles and angry capital letters. But today she stops on a blank page. Her pen hovers for a second, then begins to move slowly. I don't know what hurts more, that they always get away with it, or that no one ever believes me. It's like the whole world is on their side. I'm not trying to be the bad guy. I just want someone to see what I see. She stares at the words for a long time. There's something raw about them, something honest. She doesn't write for drama here. She writes because it helps her breathe. Downstairs, a cupboard door clicks shut, and laughter rises in short bursts. Phineas and Ferb, probably celebrating another successful escape from detection. The sound floats through the walls like a soft reminder that their world keeps moving, spinning joyfully, even as hers stalls in place. Candace closes her journal. She doesn't hate them. She never has. But there's something exhausting about always playing catch-up, about being the one who chases while everyone else enjoys the ride. She gets up and moves to her window. Outside, her brothers are now sitting calmly under the shade of a tree, sipping lemonade and talking about what to build tomorrow. It's so casual, so effortless. She watches them for a while, her head resting against the window pane. There's a tiny part of her that envies their simplicity, their certainty. They don't overthink. They just do. And everyone cheers for them. Even the neighbors join in sometimes. But when she tries to stand up to draw attention, to sound the alarm, people laugh, or roll their eyes, or pat her head like she's just being silly. And maybe that's what makes it so frustrating, not that they build crazy things, but that she's the only one who has to carry the weight of proving it. Forever almost busted, she whispers to herself, the words forming a quiet anthem. That's who she is. The girl who almost had it. Who almost got the proof. Who almost made someone listen. She hears her phone buzz and picks it up. A text from Stacy. You okay? Candace types, then erases, then types again. Yeah, just tired. Another buzz. Want to hang at the park later? She hesitates. The park means letting go. It means no more chasing, no more worrying, just existing. Laughing, watching the sky. Being someone who isn't just trying to catch the impossible. Yeah, I'd like that. She sends it before she can overthink. Candace looks back at her reflection in the window, soft light brushing against her hair. Eyes a little puffy but calm. She doesn't look like the girl who just had a morning meltdown. She looks real, like a girl in between moments, in between storms. She smiles faintly and heads toward her closet to get ready. Maybe, just for this afternoon, she won't try to bust anyone. Maybe she'll let herself breathe. Even heroes need a break. The park is calm in a way Candace doesn't often let herself enjoy. Leaves rustle above her as she sits under the shade of an old oak tree, the kind with roots that bulge up from the ground like sleepy toes stretching. Kids chase frisbees in the distance. A golden retriever bounds happily after a butterfly. Somewhere nearby, a fountain bubbles softly, sending out tiny arcs of water that glisten in the afternoon light. Candace leans back on her elbows, the grass cool against her palms. She takes a slow breath in and out like she's trying to reset her inner tempo. Stacy is next to her, legs crossed, casually scrolling through her phone. She hasn't asked about the morning, and Candace appreciates that. With Stacy, there's no need to explain things over and over. She gets it, maybe not always the full weirdness, but the feeling of it. The frustration, the exhaustion, the sense that everyone's looking at you like you're the problem. They sit there for a while in easy silence, the kind that only best friends can share. Eventually, Stacy speaks, not looking up from her phone. So, rocket squirrels, huh? Candace lets out a snort laugh she didn't know was hiding in her chest. Don't even start. I'm not judging, Stacy replies, finally glancing over. Just picturing them with tiny little goggles. It's kind of cute. Candace shakes her head, smiling in spite of herself. It was cute. Until the one in the green helmet almost kamikazed the neighbor's bird bath. They both laugh. And for a moment, Candace forgets the weight of her morning, the shouting, the panicking, the feeling of standing alone in a world that keeps shifting just out of reach. There's something about Stacy's presence that's grounding. She doesn't try to fix Candace or redirect her feelings. She just lets them exist. Candace sighs, but this time it's gentler, less dramatic. You know, she says, picking at a piece of grass. Sometimes I wonder if maybe I'm just doing too much. Like maybe I should just stop trying to catch them. Just let them do whatever they want. Stacy hums thoughtfully. Would you be okay with that? Candace frowns. I don't know. I guess part of me feels like if I stop, I'm giving up. Like they win. But it's not really about winning, right? Stacy turns to face her more directly. You're not doing it to beat them. You're doing it because you want to be heard. The words settle deep in Candace's chest. That's the thing about Stacy, she says, what Candace is too scared to admit out loud. And when it's said gently, it doesn't sting. It lands like a truth you've known all along. Candace nods slowly. I just wish Mom would see what I see, even just once. I think she does see you, Candace, Stacy says softly. She might not catch the machines or the explosions or whatever, but she sees you. She listens to your voice, your feelings, your fire. You think she's brushing you off, but maybe she's just trying to keep you from burning yourself out. Candace is quiet for a long moment, her eyes scanning the sky above the park. Maybe, she whispers. A breeze dances past, lifting strands of her hair and carrying the smell of the cut grass and cotton candy from a nearby food stand. It's a moment wrapped in peace, the kind that doesn't need resolution. Just presence. She closes her eyes for a second and leans her head back against the bark of the tree. She's still the girl who tries, who shouts, who runs around the neighborhood waving diagrams and yelling, "Mom!" at full volume. That part of her won't ever fully disappear. But maybe, just maybe, she can learn to live in the moments between the shouting, the soft pauses, the quiet spaces where she's still Candace, even without the mission. Stacy nudges her arm gently. So park snack? Ice cream? Candace opens one eye. Only if you're paying. I'm emotionally drained. Deal. They rise together, brushing grass off their jeans as they walk toward the little food stand in the corner of the park. And for a few more minutes, Candace Flynn isn't chasing anything. She's just walking, breathing, laughing beside someone who sees her even when everything else vanishes. The evening sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in gentle amber and lavender. Shadows stretch long across the Flynn-Fletcher backyard where Candace lies, sprawled on a lounge chair, legs dangling over one side, arms over the other, like a towel tossed to dry. A book rests loosely on her chest, unread. The words just blur together when your thoughts are louder than the pages. Perry the platypus waddles past the fence, nonchalantly returning from one of his mysterious errands. He gives Candace a quick glance, the way he always does, with those calm, almost knowing eyes. She watches him with narrowed suspicion, not because she knows what he does, but because he's too quiet, too sneaky. But today she lets it go. She's too tired to theorize about secret agent platypuses. In the house, Phineas and Ferb are probably already planning tomorrow's project, something with hovercrafts or quantum vacuum stabilizers. Candace doesn't even flinch at the thought anymore. She's learning to predict them like weather patterns, thrilling storms that pass quickly, leaving little trace. Still, a piece of her itches to act, to run in and document whatever madness is unfolding, to grab her phone, snap proof, and set a countdown to Mom's return. She always thinks, this time she'll see. This time it won't vanish. But then she thinks of the park, of Stacy, of the words that wrapped around her like a blanket. She listens to your voice, your feelings, your fire. Maybe there's another way to be heard. Inside the kitchen, Jeremy's name lights up her phone. A casual, "Hey, what's up?" text. She reads it once, smiles softly, and types back. Not much. Just survived another summer afternoon. Want to hang later? Her heart flutters a little. Not in the frenzied, hyper way it used to when she first crushed on him. It's different now, calmer, comfortable. She doesn't have to prove anything when she's with Jeremy. She's just Candace. No schemes, no busting, just herself. And that's new. That's something she's learning to hold on to. As she waits for his reply, she hears the familiar whoosh from the other side of the house. Something big just launched. It could be a spaceship. It could be a giant mechanical duck that sings opera. She doesn't know. She doesn't get up. Instead, she closes her eyes and lets the warm sunlight melt into her skin. Because here's the thing. Being the girl who almost busts her brothers, it's exhausting. It's like holding your breath for an entire summer, and today, she's choosing to exhale. The world doesn't fall apart when she doesn't chase it. It keeps spinning. Her brothers keep inventing. Perry keeps platypusing. And she keeps being Candace Flynn, the girl with too many feelings, too much fire, and slowly, a little more peace. The wind shifts. Somewhere the invention makes a distant crashing sound. She chuckles to herself. Good luck explaining that one to Mom. And just like that, she slips the book off her chest, opens it again, and starts to read. This time, the words are quiet enough to follow. Night arrives like a soft exhale, folding the world into hush. Street lamps blink on one by one across Danville, dotting the quiet neighborhoods with pools of golden light. And inside the Flynn-Fletcher house, all feels calm for now. Candace sits cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by pieces of a jigsaw puzzle she hasn't touched since last summer. She runs a hand through her red hair, absent-mindedly staring at the blue sky corner pieces she just can't quite find matches for. The sounds of Phineas and Ferb's earlier invention, whatever it was, have vanished entirely, like they always do. She didn't even bother checking this time. There was no point. It would be gone. It always is. And yet there's an odd sense of comfort in that rhythm, like a strange clock that only she knows how to read. She's grown so familiar with the beat of see invention, call Mom, lose invention, look crazy. It's become a soundtrack to her summer. But for the first time, she wonders if she wants it to be. Downstairs, Mom returns home from the store, humming to herself as she sets down groceries. Candace peeks from the banister, watching her with a peculiar feeling not of dread or frustration, but tenderness. Linda is always a step behind the madness, not because she's careless, but because she's tuned into a different frequency, one filled with music gigs, gardening, and an old life full of rock and roll dreams. Candace steps away quietly, leaving her mom to her peace. Not everything has to be caught. Not everything has to be proven. She returns to her room and looks around. Posters of teen pop stars, a dried bouquet from Jeremy, a crumpled list of schemes she'd written with the title Top 10 Ways to Finally Bust Them, now tossed in the trash. It's all so her. And yet she feels the gentle nudge of change, like something warm pressing at the edges of her identity. Because maybe she's not just the sister of two brilliant boys. Maybe she's not just a serial tattletale. Maybe she's not even meant to be the hero of this strange little saga. Maybe she's just Candace, and maybe that's okay. She picks up her phone again and scrolls to her group chat with Stacy and Jenny. A photo pops up. It's from the mall earlier. A candid shot of Candace, mid-laugh, head thrown back, eyes crinkled. For a moment, she doesn't recognize herself. She looks happy, really happy. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? Not catching someone in the act, not proving you were right, but catching glimpses of yourself when you're unguarded, when you're real, when you're just living and seeing that you like what you find. From the corner of her eye, Candace spots a flash outside her window and the last remnants of whatever contraption her brothers built today dissolving into thin air. She smiles, sighs, and pulls the blanket over her shoulders. Tomorrow, she whispers to herself. Maybe I'll try not to bust them again. But even if she does, that's okay too. Because busting might always be part of her story, but it's not the whole story. Not anymore. There's something about early morning silence that feels like a clean slate. The world hasn't started spinning yet, not really. The sun is still deciding whether to peek through the curtains, and the birds are having hushed conversations in the trees. In this fragile, quiet, Candace Flynn wakes up. Not with a frantic jolt, not with a burst of energy, but with a slow stretch under her covers, her limbs tangled in her bedsheets, like a girl caught between sleep and something heavier. Today there's no invention to chase, no footsteps stomping toward Mom, no yelling, no scheming, just Candace and the sound of herself. Lying still, she lets her thoughts drift into a space she rarely visits. A place beneath the shouting, beneath the accusations, beneath the obsession with busting Phineas and Ferb. A place where her voice is softer, where she's just a girl, a sister, a daughter, a dreamer. The summer has been long and packed with chaos, yet under all that noise, Candace has been carrying something else, something unspoken. Something deeper than her busting campaigns or crushes on Jeremy. It's the quiet question that flickers in her chest when no one's looking. Who am I when I'm not chasing after someone else's story? Downstairs, breakfast hums quietly to life. A pan sizzles, orange juice is poured, and Perry the platypus, seemingly just the family pet, waddles past her door like he has nothing to hide. He always does. Candace throws on her robe and pads down the stairs. Her mom is reading a magazine. Her brothers are eerily well behaved this morning. And for once it feels like a normal day. But that's almost more unsettling. Because for Candace, normal doesn't mean peace. It means space for the thoughts to bubble up, for the feelings she pushes aside to surface. She sits at the breakfast table, picks at her toast, and glances at her brothers. These two boy geniuses who somehow steal the spotlight of every summer day. She loves them. Of course she does. But she also feels like she's constantly trying to catch up, trying to be heard, to prove that she's not just a side character in her own home. Because somewhere in the whirlwind of their brilliant inventions and their boundless creativity, Candace started measuring her worth in busted blueprints and missed opportunities. She started believing that her value was tied to whether or not she could prove herself right, that if she could just once catch them in the act, someone, anyone, would really see her. But what if she already is being seen? Across the table, Phineas smiles and offers her the last blueberry muffin. Ferb, as always, says nothing but gives a small nod. These gestures are quiet, but they're real. Maybe her brothers aren't trying to overshadow her. Maybe they're just doing what they do best, and she, in her own way, is doing what she does best. After breakfast, Candace walks through the backyard barefoot. The grass is dewy and cold between her toes. She finds herself beneath the old oak tree, the one she used to climb when she was little, back when she wasn't so focused on busting, back when she was more interested in make-believe kingdoms and fairy princesses than schemes and justice. Sitting under the branches, Candace leans her head back and closes her eyes. Who was that little girl? Where did she go? Maybe she's still here, just quieter now, just buried beneath layers of expectations, anxieties, and the noise of growing up. Because Candace is more than her obsession, more than her outbursts, more than the older sister label. She's a girl learning to see herself again, not through her mom's eyes or through Jeremy's or even through Phineas and Ferb's, but through her own. There's something almost magical about sitting still long enough to hear your own heart speak. Candace lets herself listen, really listen, to that inner voice, usually drowned out by shouts of "Mom!" or the rumble of a backyard roller coaster. And what she hears isn't frustration. It isn't desperation either. It's something gentler, something quieter. It's longing, not just to be heard or proven right, but to connect, to be understood without needing to shout, to be accepted, flaws and all. She thinks of all the times she's been brushed off, labeled dramatic or obsessive, and wonders how much of that was really her trying to force people to see the world the way she did, to see her as someone who wasn't just the nagging sister, but someone with depth, passion, maybe even brilliance of her own. A soft breeze rustles the leaves above her. Somewhere in the distance, Isabella's cheerful voice can be heard asking, "What you doing?" It fades just as quickly, as if this morning has wrapped itself in a protective hush for Candace alone. She lies back, staring at the dappled sunlight through the canopy, and thinks about all the roles she's tried on. Big sister, rule enforcer, girlfriend in training, hopeless romantic. But beneath them all is something even more complicated. Someone who's always felt like she's hovering on the edge of mattering, of being enough. And maybe that's what all the busting was ever about. Not revenge, not spite, but the need for affirmation. To hear her mother say, "You were right. I believe you. I see you." She smiles softly, the ache in her chest less sharp now. The oak tree creaks gently in the wind, its limbs stretched high and wide, like it's been waiting here all along, waiting for the girl who once believed it was a castle, a spaceship, a secret lookout. That imagination isn't just something her brothers have in abundance. She once had it too. She still does. Candace leans up and looks around the backyard. The sun has risen fully now, and with it the day. In a few moments, Phineas and Ferb will probably be designing some new dimension or machine, and Perry will once again disappear mysteriously. And she'll probably try to bust them again. It's in her nature. But this morning's different. Not because anything has changed around her, but because something has shifted within her. She understands now that she doesn't have to be in competition with her brothers to matter. She doesn't need to catch them in the act to be valid. Her voice isn't only powerful when it's loud. Sometimes it's strongest when it whispers. As she heads back inside, her phone buzzes, a message from Jeremy. "Hey, feel like hanging out later?" She stares at the screen for a long moment before responding. Normally she'd panic, overthink, spiral into a frenzy about what to wear, what to say, whether or not she's cool enough. But not today. Today she just smiles and types, "Sure, I'd like that." No exclamation marks, no long paragraphs, just simple honesty. Because she's starting to believe that being herself, messy, passionate, imaginative, sometimes overwhelmed Candace, is enough. She slips into her room, curling up by the window where the sunlight pools in golden patches on the floor. The day is beginning, but for once, she doesn't feel behind it. She feels ready to meet it, not with desperation, but with quiet confidence. Because under the surface of the sister who's always chasing the chaos is a girl who's learning how to stand still and be proud of who she is, even when no one's watching. And that, more than busting any backyard invention, might be her greatest adventure yet. Later that afternoon, the house is filled with soft hums of movement, doors creaking open, distant clinks from the kitchen, and the low drone of a vacuum cleaner in the hallway. But Candace isn't really hearing any of it. She's sitting cross-legged on her bed, journal open in front of her, pencil poised delicately in hand. Journaling had always been something she kept hidden, a private ritual tucked between her hurried days of busting and social scheming. She wasn't writing to be poetic or profound. She just wanted a place where her thoughts weren't judged, where the whirlwind in her mind could quietly land. She writes slowly. Today felt different. Not because anything changed, but maybe I did. There's something grounding in watching the pencil leave gentle trails across the page. She writes about the tree in the backyard, about the silence she found in its shade. She writes about Jeremy, about how her heart didn't race this time, but instead felt calm, expectant, like someone turning toward sunlight after being in the dark. She pauses, tapping the pencil against her chin. What would she tell her younger self if she could? The little Candace, who first saw her brothers build a rocket and felt something tighten in her chest, not because it was dangerous, but because it was impressive. Because deep down, she was afraid she could never create something so bold, so wondrous, and still be taken seriously. Maybe she'd tell that younger self, you don't have to compete to shine. There's room for your kind of magic, too. It's a simple truth, but not an easy one. She closes the journal and hugs it to her chest, as if holding on to a newfound part of herself. Then she lies back again, arms spread out like she's making snow angels in the air. Her room feels safe. Hers. The posters on the walls, the small mountain of laundry in the corner, the faint scent of her favorite lotion. It's all real. All part of the girl she's slowly coming to appreciate. As she stares at the ceiling, memories float to the surface. Some silly, some bitter, all of them hers. She remembers the time she tried to sing in front of the school, and her voice cracked halfway through the first verse. She remembers the time she locked herself in the bathroom for an hour because she couldn't decide what to wear to the carnival. And she remembers the times her brothers looked at her, not with irritation, but with affection, like she was part of the story too. And maybe that's the real truth hiding beneath it all. She's not just a character on the sidelines. She's not just the obstacle in Phineas and Ferb's daily escapades. She's not just the punchline of a joke that resets with every episode. She's a girl with depth, with dreams, with a heart that feels too much and still dares to try again every day. Now, that's not something to mock. That's something to honor. A sudden laugh burst from her lips, not loud but pure. She remembers a time when she tried to organize a backyard concert and accidentally booked 2 competing bands. The chaos, the shouting, the absurdity of it all, and yet even then, she had a vision. She wanted something memorable, something hers. That spark has always been there. She just didn't always know how to wield it. There's a knock at the door. It's Phineas poking his head in. Hey, Candace, we're building a memory archiver. Want to help us test it? Her first instinct is to say no, to raise an eyebrow, deliver a snarky reply, and vow to catch them in the act. But something softer rises in her this time. Only if I get to archive some of my memories, too, she says, smiling slyly. Phineas grins. Deal. And just like that, she joins them. Not as the busting sister, but as Candace. No roles, no pressure. Just a girl stepping into a moment with curiosity instead of control. Outside in the backyard, the air is light with possibility. Phineas and Ferb are hunched over a strange-looking contraption, wires coiling like vines around chrome knobs and glowing glass tubes. Baljeet is reading aloud from a manual with exaggerated precision, while Buford is trying to lift a memory module that's clearly too heavy for one person. Candace steps onto the grass, arms crossed but eyes curious. She half expects the machine to explode or disappear the moment Mom steps outside, but for now it hums gently, its inner light pulsing like a quiet heartbeat. Phineas sees her approach and waves her over, motioning to a seat that looks like a cross between a dentist's chair and a spaceship recliner. It's simple, he explains. You sit down, think of a memory you really want to preserve, and it gets stored. Visual and emotional data completely intact. Candace arches an eyebrow. And you tested this? Ferb gives a small nod. On a watermelon. Okay. She sits down slowly, letting the chair mold around her. The machine adjusts with a soft beep. A visor lowers gently over her eyes, casting everything into a starry, shifting darkness. Phineas's voice echoes calmly. Whenever you're ready. Candace closes her eyes. And suddenly, she's back on the swings. It's a memory she didn't expect to surface. She's maybe 8 years old, her legs barely long enough to pump the swing properly. Her dad's pushing her, one hand under the seat and one ready to catch her if she slips. She's laughing. Not just a child's giggle, but a full, open-hearted laugh that bubbles from deep inside. There's no goal in that moment. No mission. No pressure. Just joy. The swing arcs forward again, and she turns her head to see Phineas and Ferb running across the grass with capes made of bath towels. They're pretending to fly. She remembers thinking they looked ridiculous and wishing she had a cape too. That wish still lingers. Not for a cape, maybe, but for the freedom, the lightness. The visor lifts. She's back in the yard, and everything feels a little fuller. Phineas gives her a thumbs up. Memory successfully archived. Candace blinks at him. That's it? Yep. Pretty cool, huh? She stands up and looks at the machine. For once, she's not suspicious. She's thankful. Thanks, she says softly. Ferb smiles, and Baljeet, adjusting his glasses, mutters, You know, statistically speaking, the emotional clarity of your memory was exceptionally high. Candace shrugs. Guess I've got a lot going on under the surface. Buford mutters, No kidding. But there's no edge in his voice, just quiet admiration. They all feel it, even if no one says it out loud, the sense that Candace isn't just the girl always yelling Mom from off-screen. She's someone, and that matters. That evening, when she's back inside, Candace changes into her pajamas and lies on the bed. The room is bathed in soft, golden light, the kind that makes everything feel a little more dreamlike. She stretches out, hands behind her head, and sighs. For once, her thoughts aren't racing. She's not worried about busting anyone, or whether Jeremy's seen her latest post, or if she's falling behind on anything. She's just Candace. And that's enough. She picks up her journal again and writes, Maybe I don't need a perfect moment to prove I matter. Maybe I've mattered all along. The clock ticks quietly. Somewhere downstairs, the family's laughing, probably watching something silly on TV, probably together. She'll join them in a moment. But right now, she's just savoring this feeling. A warmth not born from praise or validation, but from knowing, deep down, that she's worth more than any scheme, more than any sibling rivalry. And maybe tomorrow she'll still try to bust her brothers. That part of her hasn't vanished. But now it's not coming from insecurity. It's just a part of the dance, a role she plays knowingly, joyfully, balanced with the rest of who she is. She closes her eyes, letting her breath settle, the last light fading around her. The night is quiet. Her heart is lighter. And somewhere under the surface, a sister finally finds peace with her place in the world. There's a peaceful rhythm to the mid-afternoon light drifting through Candace's bedroom window. Shadows stretch lazily across the floor while the soft buzz of summer life continues. Outside kids on scooters, birds flitting through tree branches, and the occasional hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the street. Candace sits cross-legged on her bed, flipping through her phone absent-mindedly, a faint smile tugging at the edge of her lips. It isn't one of those days where something wild is happening. The boys aren't building a roller coaster or teleporting to the moon. And Candace, she's not rushing around trying to catch them in the act. Today is quiet, and quiet days are rare enough to feel like treasures. Her phone buzzes a message from Stacy. Meet at the park in 10. I've got slushies and gossip. Candace taps a reply without hesitation. Be there. Wearing sunglasses in case the gossip is that spicy. She grins and grabs her shoes. The park is only a short walk away, just past the big sycamore trees that arch overhead like guardians of the neighborhood. It's familiar, worn in by the weight of years and footsteps. The bench near the duck pond is where Candace and Stacy always meet, a place where time seems to slow, where they can sink into easy conversation without the pressure of the world watching. Stacy is already there, 2 brightly colored slushies in hand and oversized sunglasses perched dramatically on her nose. Welcome to the Council of Chill, she says as Candace plops down beside her. Candace laughs. Is there an oath? There is now, Stacy replies, raising her drink like a goblet. Repeat after me. I solemnly swear to chill until further notice. They clink slushy cups and take a sip. Moments like this, filled with laughter, sun, and a best friend who understands her unspoken thoughts, are what keep Candace balanced. With Stacy, there's no need to explain why she spirals or why she fixates on her brother's inventions. Stacy gets it. She listens without judgment, always meeting Candace halfway, even when her stories don't make sense to anyone else. Okay, spill it, Candace says after a beat. What's the gossip? Oh, Stacy says dramatically, lowering her sunglasses. You'll never guess who accidentally sent a love poem to the school-wide email list instead of just to their crush. Candace gasps. No. Oh, yes. And guess who the poem was about? Their laughter bubbles up, light and loud and unfiltered. Ducks scatter near the edge of the pond. The sun dips a little lower, brushing the grass with gold. They talk for what feels like hours about silly things, meaningful things, and everything in between. At one point, Stacy mentions something about Jeremy, something sweet, something small, and Candace tries to act casual, but her cheeks warm instinctively. Stacy doesn't press, just offers a knowing smirk and a gentle nudge with her elbow. You're still crushing hard, huh? Candace lets out a dreamy sigh. I don't know what it is. He's just so normal. Normal's underrated, Stacy says. Especially when your life is basically a cartoon tornado. Candace giggles. He's just nice and calm. And he always sees me, like really sees me. Stacy nods. And that's why I think you like him. Because he doesn't make you feel like you have to prove anything. You get to just exist. That line sits with Candace longer than she expects. She leans back on the bench, tilting her face toward the sky. Just exist. It's a powerful thought. When so much of her life feels like performance busting the boys, acting older than she is, chasing the idea of control, it's comforting to know there are places and people where she doesn't have to try so hard. That softness, that sanctuary it lives in these moments, in this friendship, and in the quiet, gentle glow she feels whenever Jeremy smiles at her like she's the only person in the room. As the sun lowers and the shadows stretch longer across the ground, Candace feels the weight of the day settle lightly on her shoulders. But it's not a burden. It's a warmth. The kind you only feel when you're not alone in the world. The walk back from the park is slow. Candace trails her fingers along the metal railing that lines the sidewalk, letting her thoughts float lazily like dandelion seeds in the breeze. Stacy has gone home, waving with that easy smile of hers, and now it's just Candace and the soft hum of summer air. The sky is painted in hues of lavender and faded orange, the kind of sunset that makes everything look like a memory before it's even passed. Candace kicks a pebble down the sidewalk and watches it roll until it disappears into the grass. She's not in a rush. There's no emergency, no chaos, no urge to catch anyone in the act. For once, it's just quiet. She pauses near the old wooden bridge that crosses a narrow creek. This spot has always been her favorite, a little in-between place where she feels like she can just pause life for a second. She rests her elbows on the rail, gazing down at the slowly moving water below. Tiny ripples bounce off smooth stones, and dragonflies flit just above the surface. And then her phone buzzes again. This time it's Jeremy. Just seeing his name makes her heart flutter in that weird way, half excitement, half nervous energy. She opens the message. "Hey, Candace, free tonight? Thought we could hit up Mr. Slushy Dog. My treat." She rereads it 3 times, eyes wide, a huge grin forming on her face. The kind of grin that feels so big it starts in your chest and makes its way out. She types back, then deletes her message, then types again. Deletes? Finally, she settles on. "I'd love to. Meet you at 7? Send." For a moment, she panics. Was that too eager? Too late? Too short? But then the reply comes. Perfect. See you soon. Her heart does a little flip. Mr. Slushy Dog is the place where almost every kid in town has memories, from birthday parties to lazy hangouts after school. The sign out front blinks with that signature flicker on the letter U in slushy, like it's perpetually unsure of itself. The floors are a bit sticky, the booths slightly too snug, but that only makes it more beloved. Candace spots Jeremy at the back corner booth, sipping from a giant cup that's half cherry, half blue raspberry, his classic. He spots her and waves, standing halfway to greet her. "Hey, Candace." "Hey," she says, trying to sound casual even as her brain is running in 20 different directions. She slides into the booth, and for a while they just talk. Not about anything huge or serious, just the day. The weird shape one of the clouds looked like earlier, the way Buford accidentally superglued his hand to his shoe that one time. But the way Jeremy looks at her kind, attentive present makes the whole room feel softer. There's something about him that slows time for her. Not in the dramatic, hearts-floating way you see in movies. It's more subtle than that and more real. He listens. He laughs at her jokes, even the ones she's not sure landed. He never makes her feel like she's too much too loud, too anxious, too caught up in her own head. She finds herself leaning in, talking more freely than she usually does with anyone besides Stacy. At one point, Jeremy says, "I think it's cool how much you care about things." Candace blinks. "What do you mean?" "Well, most people sort of just let stuff slide, you know? But you're always so determined, like you really try, even when it's exhausting. I think that's kind of brave." Her cheeks flush. She fumbles with her straw. "No one's ever called me brave for trying to bust my brothers." He laughs gently. "Not for that, just for being you, fully." That hits her in a place she didn't know needed to be heard. So much of her time is spent feeling too much for everyone else, too intense, too dramatic, too emotional. But here's someone telling her that her intensity isn't a flaw, it's a strength. The conversation trails into silence, but it's the good kind. The kind where nothing needs to be said. Just sitting in the same space feels enough. Outside, the streetlights blink on one by one. Candace thinks, maybe I don't have to always chase approval. Maybe sometimes I already have it. Later that night, Candace lies in bed, the slushy cups still on her nightstand, half melted. Her room is dark except for the glow of the moon casting gentle shadows across her posters and framed pictures. In the silence, she replays Jeremy's words in her head that she's brave, not annoying, that her care means something. She stares at the ceiling with a soft, half-sleepy smile on her face. For the first time in a long time, she isn't plotting or planning. She's not even thinking about what her brothers are up to. There's a warmth in her chest that doesn't demand attention, and it just rests there, like a candle that flickers calmly, steadily. And just before drifting off, she texts Stacy. You were right. Today felt calm, like maybe I don't always have to fix everything. A minute later, a reply blinks in. See? You're allowed to just be, Candace. Try it again tomorrow. Candace smiles into the pillow. Maybe she will. The next day doesn't go smoothly, of course it doesn't. Phineas and Ferb have somehow converted the neighbor's hedge maze into a giant living labyrinth full of talking topiaries. And yes, Candace absolutely tries to call Mom, and yes, the whole thing vanishes before she can prove a thing. But something's different. When the garden is suddenly normal again, and her mother gives her the usual concerned but patient look, Candace doesn't explode into a dramatic spiral. Instead, she just sighs and mutters, typical, with a little shake of her head. No screaming, no crying into the carpet. Just a gentle resignation, and underneath it, something close to peace. She walks away from the hedge and finds Stacy waiting at the gate, hands in her pockets. You didn't freak out this time, Stacy notes with a curious smile. Candace shrugs. I mean, what's the point? The universe clearly has it out for me. Might as well save my breath. Growth, Stacy says with mock reverence. Look at you, becoming wise. They laugh together, arms bumping as they stroll toward the mall. And though the sting of another failed bust attempt lingers, it doesn't take center stage. Instead, her mind drifts to Jeremy, and to how calm she felt sitting across from him, laughing over slushy flavors and shared awkwardness. That feeling stays with her like a secret tucked into her back pocket. Later that week, the three of them, Candace, Stacy, and Jeremy, end up hanging out together. It's rare for all of them to have a day off at the same time, but when it happens, it's always worth it. They go bowling, eat too many fries at the food court, and sit on the roof of Stacy's house watching the stars come out. It's here that Candace lets her guard drop the most. They talk about nothing important, what they'd name their imaginary band, what kind of sandwich best represents their personality, why Jeremy thinks raccoons would totally win in a small animal wrestling match, and through it all, Candace is laughing. Really laughing. Not forced, not sarcastic, just free. There's a rhythm to their friendship, one that doesn't demand, doesn't pull, doesn't rush. Stacy has this way of knowing when to push Candace out of her own head and when to just sit beside her in silence. Jeremy listens with his whole heart, never interrupting, never trying to fix things, just being there. Candace starts to understand something she hadn't before. She doesn't have to prove herself every second of the day to be loved. She doesn't need to be perfect or constantly right or in control of everything. Some people, the right people, love her even when she's a little messy, a little loud, a little tangled in her own thoughts. She finds herself opening up about things she never thought she would. Her fear of never being taken seriously. The weird pressure she feels to be the responsible one. because she's the older sibling. The feeling that her emotions are always too big for the room. Stacy listens, one arm behind her head, staring up at the stars. Jeremy murmurs, "You don't have to be small to be lovable, Candace." And there it is again, that flicker of calm, that quiet, unexpected softness. The rooftop wind carries the scent of freshly cut grass, mixing with the faint aroma of the fries they'd brought up earlier. The sky above is a blanket of navy blue, dusted with stars that flicker gently, as if even the cosmos are whispering, "Slow down, Candace. It's okay." She stretches her legs out, boots crossed at the ankle, and looks up into that quiet sky. There's a pause in the conversation. No one rushes to fill it. It's a rare and beautiful thing. Silence that feels full, not empty. She lets out a long breath, not from exhaustion, but release. "I think I get it now," she says quietly, not really to anyone, but both of them here. "Get what?" Jeremy asks, his voice barely above the breeze. "Why you two matter so much," she says. "You don't need me to do anything. You just let me be." Stacy tilts her head, her earrings catching the moonlight. "Well, yeah, that's what friends are for. And in Jeremy's case," she adds with a sly grin, "that's what crushes are for." Jeremy laughs, but there's warmth behind it. "You don't have to be anyone but yourself with us, Candace, even when that self is trying to build a government file on your brothers." Candace smirks. "Hey, someone has to." They all chuckle, and the sound floats upward, carried into the summer night. There's something about that moment, sitting under the stars, flanked by the two people who see her most clearly, that reshapes something in Candace's heart. Not drastically, not dramatically, but just enough. Just a small shift, like a ship adjusting its course, by a degree still headed into the unknown, but now with a little more hope. Over the next few days, the world doesn't change. Phineas and Ferb are still building improbable marvels by noon. Mom is still oblivious. Perry the platypus still vanishes for hours at a time. But Candace changes. She still tries to bust her brothers, of course. It's a compulsion she can't quite let go of, like a muscle memory. But her whole mood softens. She doesn't spiral into panic as easily. When she loses with a little more grace. And when she wins, or at least almost does, she still calls Stacy first. They talk almost every evening now, even if there's nothing urgent to say. Just updates about the day. Just connection. Sometimes Jeremy joins in. Sometimes not. But whether it's one or both of them, Candace is finding a new kind of rhythm. A life not dictated by chaos, but punctuated with peace. It's not that her world got quieter. It's that she found calm inside the noise. On one rainy afternoon, when the inventions are paused and the sky is gray, Candace finds herself alone in her room. No plans, no schemes, just stillness. She picks up her guitar, an old one, slightly dusty that she hasn't touched in months, and starts plucking random strings. The sound is imperfect, but gentle. Stacy had mentioned once that Candace was good at music. She hadn't believed her at the time, but maybe it doesn't matter if she's good. Maybe it's just enough that it feels good. She hums a soft melody, half-formed, and for no one but herself. And in that moment, she isn't the sister, or the buster, or the girl chasing approval. She's just Candace, and that's enough. And just like that, the segment ends not with an explosion or grand finale, but with the softest thing Candace Flynn has ever known, a moment of peace, held gently between friendship and self-acceptance. Tomorrow might bring another wild invention, another almost busted situation, another perfectly timed disappearance of evidence. But tonight the world is quiet, and Candace is okay. Candace always started with the truth. The honest, bewildering truth. Something spectacular would unfold right before her eyes. A rocket ship, a roller coaster, a fully functional time machine, and she would react the only way she knew how, with urgency, with wide eyes, a phone in hand, and a mission set on repeat. "Mom, you have to come home right now. They've built, actually built, a giant something or other in the backyard again." She knew what she saw. She always knew what she saw. But being right had never been enough. The strange part was, Candace didn't start out trying to be a whistleblower. At first, she thought she was just pointing out the obvious. She wanted to tell her mom because it was absurd not to. It was like seeing a flying whale and not telling someone it defied nature. Yet every time she tried to show someone, the evidence was gone. Not just missing, not just hidden, erased, as if it never existed at all. And over time, something shifted inside her. It wasn't just about the invention anymore. It was about being believed. This dream of being heard, of having someone stop and say, "Yes, Candace, I see it too," had taken root deeper than she realized. It had tangled itself into her thoughts, her emotions, her very sense of self. And with every failed attempt, it grew harder to shake the feeling that maybe her voice didn't carry. Maybe she could shout into the wind and it would return nothing. That's what made it all so exhausting. The cycle, the build-up of adrenaline, the rush to find Mom, the frantic sprint to the backyard, the expectant finger pointed at thin air, and then silence. No roller coaster, no rocket ship, just freshly mowed grass and two innocent-looking brothers playing with a football. "Candace, sweetie," Mom would sigh. "Maybe try to relax. You're always so tense lately." Tense? Oh, of course she was tense. She was living in a loop, one where truth felt like a hallucination, where reality rearranged itself just in time to make her look ridiculous. And yet she kept trying. Because even if no one saw it, she did. And she needed that to matter. One afternoon, after yet another failed bust, Candace sat on the edge of her bed, phone still warm in her hand, wondering what exactly she was chasing. Was it justice? Was it the thrill? Was it acknowledgement? She remembered something her mom once said offhandedly while sipping coffee and reading a catalog. "Candace, you can be a little dramatic sometimes." At the time, she brushed it off, but now it echoed. Was that how everyone saw her? Dramatic, over the top, an attention seeker? She didn't want attention. She wanted the truth to be seen. She wanted someone to say, "You're not crazy. That really happened." There's a unique loneliness in being the only witness. And Candace lived in that loneliness more days than she could count. Even Stacy, patient as she was, didn't see the inventions firsthand. She believed Candace, but it wasn't the same. It never was. Belief was comforting, but it wasn't proof. And Candace was starving for proof. She wanted the satisfaction of seeing her mother's face when it finally happened. That wide-eyed, slack-jawed look of, "Oh my goodness, you were right all along." And then, maybe then, she could rest. Not just physically, but emotionally. The constant buzzing in her mind, the noise of needing to fix something, to prove something, maybe, that would finally quiet down. But dreams don't always come true the way we think they will. Sometimes, the dream of being heard turns into something else entirely. Sometimes it becomes a longing to hear yourself, to understand your own voice, even when no one else seems to listen, to know your truth and let it be enough. There was a quiet evening when Candace, lying on her bed in her pajamas, stared up at the ceiling and wondered what her life would be like if she just stopped trying. What if, for one whole day, she didn't chase after her brother's bizarre blueprints or sprint around the neighborhood screaming, "More! What if she let it go? Not because she gave up, but because she gave herself permission to rest." The thought felt terrifying and freeing. Because, in all honesty, her role as the busting sister had grown heavier over time. It wasn't just a habit. It had become an identity. She was the girl who always tried to expose her brothers. That was the routine. That was what people expected. But was that all she was meant to be? Did her voice only exist to contradict her brother's creativity? Or could it be something more? Something softer, something less frantic, more hers? A breeze blew in through her window. Outside, the summer sky was darkening into lavender and navy, the soft outlines of trees dancing against the sleepy twilight. It was beautiful, and she realized she rarely noticed it. She was always too busy running. Candace sat up, crossed her legs, and breathed in slowly. She could hear Phineas and Ferb's laughter in the distance, and for once, it didn't spark her usual flurry of suspicion. Tonight, it just sounded like boys being happy. It didn't mean she was wrong. It didn't mean they weren't up to something. It just meant, in this moment, she could let it go. Of course, that didn't erase the hundreds of moments she'd felt invisible. The way people waved her off, the eye rolls, the sighs. "Here she goes again," they'd say. She'd gotten used to being the punchline. Even Jeremy, as kind and patient as he was, didn't always understand why it mattered so much to her. Sometimes she wanted to grab everyone by the shoulders and make them see. But deep down, she also knew. Yelling louder wasn't the answer. What she needed wasn't louder noise. It was quiet validation. And so she began writing in a journal. It wasn't a grand decision. It just started with a single sentence. "Today I saw them build a spaceship." And then she kept going. Not just with the inventions, but with how she felt about them. How it felt to be alone in the truth. How exhausting it was to be laughed at. How much she wished someone would say, "That must be really hard." Each entry helped her breathe a little easier. And with time, she began to realize she didn't always need someone else to validate her. She could hear herself, and sometimes that was enough. One late morning, she found herself sitting on the porch with a cup of juice, legs tucked under her. Stacy sat beside her, quietly scrolling through her phone. There was no busting today. No wild chase. Candace had decided to simply be. And that's when Stacy looked over and said something Candace never forgot. "You know, I think it's kind of cool that you don't let things go. It means you care. Even if no one gets it, I do." It was a small comment, offhanded. But to Candace, it felt like sunlight on skin. To be heard even just a little could change everything. That's the thing about being seen. It doesn't have to be by everyone. Sometimes it just takes one person, one friend, one sentence, one moment of someone looking you in the eyes and saying, "I believe you." And suddenly, you're not shouting into the wind anymore. You're having a conversation. And in that gentle exchange, you find peace. It wasn't just about being believed. It was about not having to prove herself every waking moment. Candace's life had been built around evidence, urgency, and racing against time. But the more she slowed down, the more she let herself feel instead of fight. The more she discovered the fragile beauty inside her own voice. And it wasn't always loud. Sometimes it trembled. Sometimes it cracked. And sometimes it whispered truths she didn't want to hear. But it was hers. And that meant something. One afternoon, she sat in the garden with her mom, Linda. The sun was bright, the air warm, and Perry, the platypus, sat quietly in the corner, pretending to be nothing more than a very bored pet. Candace had decided not to bring up her brothers that day. No accusations, no chasing, just peace. Linda was humming to herself, tending to her plants. Candace, sitting on the porch steps, hesitated. Then she asked gently, "Mom, do you think I overreact a lot?" Linda paused. She looked over, a little surprised. "Sometimes," she said honestly, but without a trace of judgment. "But I think that's because you care so deeply. You feel things big, and that's not a bad thing." Candace blinked, taken aback by the softness in her mom's words. No sighs, no brushing off, no, "Here we go again." Just acknowledgement. That one sentence stuck in her chest like a warm ember. She carried it with her for days. Sometimes the loudest part of her wasn't her voice. It was her silence filled with all the things she wished she could say. The days when she felt like she had to smile so others wouldn't ask what was wrong. The nights when she lay in bed wondering if Jeremy liked her just enough, but never quite enough. The moments she wanted to scream because her brothers were defying the laws of physics and no one cared. But also, the moments when she remembered that she didn't have to carry it all alone. Jeremy had once told her while holding her hand at the park, "You don't have to do anything for me to like you." Candace had laughed at the time, saying, "You sure? Because I've got a running list of cool things I might do if I ever had time." But later, in the stillness of her room, she thought about those words again. You don't have to do anything. That was hard to believe. She always thought she had to do to be loved, to perform, to achieve, to fix, to catch, to be worthy. But what if being herself was enough? What if being Candace Flynn, anxious, passionate, dramatic, funny, and loving was actually all she ever needed to be? It didn't mean she stopped trying. That wasn't in her nature. But she started choosing her moments more carefully. Some days, she still tried to bust her brothers. That impulse wasn't gone. But other days, she chose to sit with Stacy and sip smoothies instead, or play her guitar and write silly songs about summer, or simply breathe in and breathe out, knowing that her words mattered, even if the world didn't always say so. Being heard didn't always come from shouting louder. It came from knowing when to speak gently even to herself. It came from learning when to let go and when to stand firm. And slowly, bit by bit, Candace began to realize she didn't need to be right to be valid. She didn't need a witness to be real. She didn't need to be the loudest voice in the room to be heard. She already was in ways that mattered most. One evening, as summer drifted into its golden hour, Candace found herself on the backyard swing. The house was quiet. The usual bursts of energy, from rocket-powered roller skates to accidental interdimensional portals, had taken the night off. Even Phineas and Ferb were inside, tinkering with blueprints under soft desk lamps instead of fireworks. And Candace, she was still, just swinging back and forth, watching the fireflies blink into existence. She hummed a little tune to herself, a melody that came uninvited, one she remembered from when she was younger. One Linda used to sing in the kitchen while making pancakes on slow Saturday. In the hush of twilight, she realized something that made her chest ache and warm all at once. She'd spent so much time trying to be heard. She hadn't always paused to listen to others, yes, but also to herself. What did she really want? Not just today, but truly at her core. Not revenge, not validation, not even victory. What she really longed for was connection. To be understood. To be embraced, flaws, quirks, all of it. To be seen not as a problem to be solved, but as a person trying her best. And in that moment of quiet self-awareness, Candace smiled. Not a smug, "I've got you now" smile, but a soft one. The kind that you wear when no one's watching and you know deep down that maybe, just maybe, you're going to be okay. It didn't mean she stopped being Candace. She still flung open doors dramatically. She still gasped at the latest contraption rolling down the street. And yes, she still called out, "Mom! Mom! You have to see this!" But sometimes she didn't. Sometimes she let the moment pass. Let her brothers be brilliant. Let her breath stay calm. Let the world be wild, without feeling the need to tame it. Because in truth, she didn't always need to be the one who uncovered the unbelievable. Sometimes it was enough to witness it, to marvel, to laugh, to sigh and say, "There they go again," and then turn back toward her own life, one step more certain in her skin. That summer taught Candace many things, not through grand gestures, but through hundreds of tiny shifts. A friend's listening ear, a song hummed softly, a brother's unexpected thank you, a crush's honest affection, a mother's patient glance, and her own growing stillness. She didn't stop chasing, that wasn't the point. But she no longer chased to prove something. She chased because it was her, because the fire in her heart, the storm in her steps, and the love behind every shout were real. And now she knew that even when no one said it out loud, she was heard. She was enough. And in the gentle dark of summer, beneath stars she never needed to catch, Candace Flynn finally let the noise fade and fell into sleep, not with a battle cry, but with a whisper, "I see me now." Evening had a way of softening things in Danville. The sun lowered behind the Flynn Fletcher house like a quiet exhale, painting the sky in soft streaks of orange and pink. Trees swayed gently, casting long shadows over the backyard, and for a moment, just a small, golden moment, it felt like the world had nothing left to prove. Inside, Candace was tidying her room, but not in the frantic way she used to when she was flustered or trying to feel in control. This was different. She was folding her blanket, tucking a few notebooks away, lighting the little lavender candle she got from Stacy for her last birthday. Her movements were slow, thoughtful, almost ritualistic. The day was winding down, and she was letting it. The sounds of the house floated through her door Ferb's quiet footsteps, Phineas chuckling at something on his tablet, her mom humming while drying dishes. These once annoying everyday noises now felt like lullabies. Candace had spent so long chasing after a moment of chaos, of revelation, of exposure so certain that busting her brothers would bring clarity. But now, as summer nights became longer and quieter, she was discovering that clarity didn't always come from loud truths. Sometimes it arrived gently, through a soft breeze, through a paused breath, through a sister standing still. She moved to her window, resting her elbows on the sill. The backyard was quiet. No roller coasters, no haunted toaster factories, no time-traveling portals. Just the treehouse, the swing set, and the dying light making shadows dance across the fence. In a rare moment, she wasn't waiting to spot something outrageous. She wasn't planning her next move. She was simply watching, breathing. And in that stillness, something settled inside her. The urge to be the hero of every story. It no longer burned quite so bright. She still felt like Candace, determined, expressive, bursting with energy and emotion. but that energy had shifted. No longer a frantic wave trying to crash through everyone else's plans, but a tide gently retreating from the shore, knowing it would rise again when needed. She could let today go. The moments she didn't capture. The inventions that disappeared. The times no one saw what she saw. They didn't have to haunt her. They didn't have to define her. The world didn't owe her applause for every effort, and she didn't need to succeed at every plan to matter. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, scrolling through old photos. There she was in mid-shout, pointing toward some impossible machine in the distance. Another image showed her, hair windswept, mouth open wide, a freeze frame of one of her many mom moments. She used to look at those with embarrassment, frustration, even shame. But now, she smiled. They were her. And being her wasn't a failure. It was brave. To care so loudly. To love so fiercely. To want something to make sense in a world that rarely did. From across the hall, a knock. Light, familiar. It was Phineas. "Hey, Candace," he said, poking his head in. "We just finished building a model of the solar system, but like life-sized. It orbited and everything. You probably didn't see it because it collapsed into a tiny singularity before dinner." Candace stared at him. He wasn't trying to tease her. He wasn't rubbing it in. He was sharing. "I didn't even try to bust you today," she said softly, more to herself than to him. He nodded with a little grin. "We noticed." And then, without ceremony, he added, "Thanks." Then he turned and left, heading back to wherever Ferb was waiting. Candace blinked. She sat there, stunned by the simplicity of it. Thanks. No sarcasm, no counterplot. Just thanks. Candace lay back on her bed, arms resting behind her head, staring at the ceiling. The little plastic stars she'd stuck up there when she was 10 still glowed faintly in the dark, even after all these years. They'd become a quiet constellation of childhood memories, quietly pulsing while the world changed around her. There was something deeply comforting in their quiet resilience. As she watched them now, she thought about all the plans she'd made, not just to bust her brothers, but to prove herself in other ways, to be heard, to be understood, to be the responsible one, the one who saw what others didn't. But tonight those ambitions didn't weigh on her like they used to. They floated somewhere above her, like those ceiling stars still part of her, but no longer pressing down. Candace had spent much of her summer running sometimes after her brothers, sometimes from her own feelings. But tonight, in the safety of dim lamplight and soft pajamas, she let herself rest. Not just physically, but emotionally. She gave herself permission to be unburdened. That was harder than it sounded. She turned her head toward the bookshelf by the wall. Old diaries, half-filled notebooks, doodles of Jeremy's name inside puffy hearts. A dusty box labeled "Things That Were Important Once." She got up, padded softly across the room, and opened the lid. Inside, a collection of little trinkets. A hair clip she wore the day she first saw Jeremy at the park. A torn flyer for a dance she never went to. A crumpled blueprint of one of Phineas and Ferb's more absurd machines. She had rescued it from the trash, certain that someday it would be Exhibit A in her busting case. Now, she ran her fingers gently over the paper. She smirked. What had once made her blood boil now made her chuckle. That machine, a flying toaster that also played the banjo, had somehow felt like her mortal enemy once. It was so absurd, and yet that was what made it special. What made her summer special. She folded it carefully and placed it back in the box, not as evidence, but as memory. And then her phone buzzed. A message from Stacy. "You okay?" Tonight felt kind of quiet without you yelling about something LOL. Love you. Candace laughed softly, typing back, weirdly okay. I think I'm finally learning to enjoy the quiet. Stacy's reply was instant. About time. The quiet misses you too sometimes. Candace hugged her phone to her chest for a moment and let out a long breath. Her heart, once always on alert, was softer now. Not dull, just less frantic. She still cared deeply about everything, about everyone. But maybe she didn't have to be the keeper of balance all the time. Maybe she didn't need to fix every moment. Maybe, just maybe, she could be part of the chaos and still be at peace. She walked downstairs to grab a glass of water, her bare feet quiet against the floorboards. The house was dim, warm. Her mom was sitting in the living room reading a magazine. She looked up and smiled. You all right, sweetie? Candace nodded. Yeah, just thinking. Linda Flynn Fletcher studied her daughter with a familiar maternal intuition. You've always had a strong voice, Candace. Don't forget, even when things don't go the way you expect, people are still listening. Candace smiled, her eyes glinting with that same flame, only softer now. Thanks, Mom. And she meant it, not just for the comment, but for everything. For letting her try and fail. For being there when she needed to vent. For never making her feel small, even when her ideas seemed outrageous. As she climbed back up the stairs, Candace whispered to herself, it's okay to let it go. The chase, the stress, the pressure to prove something every single day. She didn't have to end the summer as a different person. Just a little lighter, a little freer. The soft hush of night welcomed her back into her room. She slid under the covers, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and let her thoughts drift not in a panic, but in curiosity. What would tomorrow bring? Maybe nothing extraordinary. Maybe a backyard picnic. Or a goofy new invention. Or a song Phineas and Ferb would somehow get the whole neighborhood to sing. And maybe she wouldn't try to stop it. Maybe she'd laugh along. Maybe she'd even join in. Morning always felt different after a night like that. But the sun hadn't risen just yet, and Candace lay in that quiet, liminal space where dreams and memories blend. Her mind drifted to the countless times she'd stood just inches away from busting her brothers. All the moments when the rocket ships and time machines and giant roller coasters would vanish just in time and she'd be left in the dust, alone with her frustration. But this time remembering didn't hurt. She smiled as the images replayed Phineas in his calm, earnest voice, always explaining some grand plan, and Ferb, saying only a few words but somehow still making everything cooler. There had always been something beautiful about the way they dreamed, limitless and fearless. Maybe it wasn't just her job to rein them in. Maybe part of her role, the one she hadn't fully understood, was to witness it, to remember it, to carry a piece of their wonder inside her, even if she didn't always agree. Her bedroom felt like a safe cocoon now, filled with those echoes. She turned onto her side, letting her hand dangle off the edge of the bed. Somewhere downstairs, the refrigerator hummed. Outside, the wind nudged the trees, whispering softly across the lawn. Candace wasn't searching for anything tonight. She wasn't plotting or bracing herself. She was simply present, fully inside her own quiet. She remembered a time not too long ago when she thought that peace only came when everything was solved. But tonight she saw it differently. Peace wasn't about control. It was about surrender, about accepting that she was enough, even if the world around her didn't fall into place the way she wanted. And in that acceptance, she felt something unexpected. Joy. Not the loud, explosive kind, but a still shimmering kind that pulsed just beneath her ribs, the kind of joy that comes not from success, but from letting go of the chase, from sitting still in her own skin and realizing she didn't have to prove her place anymore. It was already hers. She reached over to her nightstand and opened an old spiral-bound notebook. Most of the pages were filled with rants, angry scribbles, all-caps paragraphs about injustice and invisibility, about being the only sane one in a house of chaos. But she flipped to a fresh page. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't write about her brothers or Jeremy or even her mom. She wrote about herself. "Dear me," she began, "you did enough today, and you don't need to explain anything. You're allowed to rest." She paused, then continued. "You're not weak for being emotional. You're strong for feeling so much and still showing up, still caring, still loving." A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. It wasn't the kind of tear that begged for fixing. It was the kind that simply needed space, so she gave it that. The world outside was slowly turning blue with approaching dawn, but Candace stayed curled under her blanket. She could hear the beginning rustle of movement in the house. Maybe Perry the platypus was already on some secret mission. Maybe her brothers were scribbling out some new blueprint. Maybe today would be just as wild as every day before. But maybe she wouldn't try to tame it. Maybe she would live inside it, even if just a little. And maybe, just maybe, she'd be happy doing so. There was no perfect ending, no final bust, no great "I told you so" moment. Just breath, just calm. Just a girl learning that being seen doesn't always require shouting. Sometimes it just means being still and knowing you're already enough. Candace stayed in that quiet bubble a while longer, the hush of early dawn stretching softly around her. Her eyes fluttered open just enough to glimpse the gentle pastel light outside, the sky painted in sleepy pinks and lavender blues. The world was waking up, but for her the day had not quite begun. Not yet. And in this fleeting pocket of time after the storms, the shouting, the chases, and the heartbreak, she found what she hadn't known she was missing. Stillness. That kind of silence where nothing needs to happen, where you don't need to fix, don't need to win, don't need to be heard louder than anyone else. Where being alive, simply and quietly, is more than enough. She tucked the notebook back into her nightstand, placing it gently beneath a faded photo of her and Stacy. The two of them were younger in the picture, giggling with snow cones in hand, a little mess on Candace's shirt and her hair frizzy from the heat. She smiled at it now, not embarrassed, not frustrated, just fond. Because every version of her had tried. The loud, desperate Candace, the hopeful romantic, the overly responsible sister, the girl who cried in her room and the one who danced when no one was watching. They were all her. They were all still here, learning how to be soft without losing strength. She reached for her blanket, nestling deeper into it. And somewhere beyond the walls, she could hear the faint, familiar buzz of her brothers getting started on yet another impossible project. There'd be gadgets, maybe a rocket, maybe a time vortex, maybe a circus on the moon. Who knew? Candace didn't need to know. She didn't even need to stop it. Because this time, she wasn't chasing them. She was just resting. The tension in her shoulders faded. Her breathing slowed, and her grip on needing to be right, on needing to prove something to someone, gently loosened, like letting go of a balloon into a bright blue sky. Tomorrow would come, as it always did, with all its chaos and confusion, with its missed opportunities and magical moments. But for now, in this exact moment, Candace Flynn, the girl who once needed to be heard so badly it hurt, had finally found something more lasting than being right. She found peace in being, not proving, just being. And as her eyes slowly closed and the first true rays of morning crept into her room, Candace whispered a thought not to the world, not to her mom, not even to her brothers, but to herself. Maybe I'm not just the sister of the smart kids. Maybe I'm not just the girl who yells a lot. Maybe I'm just me, and maybe that's okay. The wind carried it out the window into the air like a lullaby only the morning would hear, and with that she let the day go. Truly, finally, she let it go. And just like that, dreamers, Candace Flynn's story comes to a gentle close. Tonight wasn't about big inventions or wild adventures. It was about the quiet in between. The spaces where we find ourselves when no one's watching, where trying gives way to simply being. And maybe, just maybe, in those softest moments, we discover who we've really been all along. If this story helped you relax, reflect, or feel a little less alone, we're so glad you're here. Be sure to tell us in the comments what part of Candace's journey felt most real to you, or just let us know you're okay. That's more than enough. Until our next sleepy lore, stay cozy, stay kind, and keep dreaming. Good night.